This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek. This past week in California, we've learned that at the Foster Farm plant in Livingston, California, 8 workers have died and the plant has been contaminated for months with a COVID virus. The question working people in California, the families, the community in Livingston in California have to ask is, why has this happened? Why have these workers died? And what is going on for agricultural workers in the Central Valley? And joining us is Ramon Real, who is a community activist, an actor in the area, and has been working to help defend workers and get more information out about the pandemic. Welcome to WorkWeek, Ramon.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
So, Ramon, you have been working for some time to get information out, to talk to workers who are very concerned about getting contaminated themselves, their coworkers, and their families. What is happening, and why has this been allowed to happen?
Well, let's start and preface that back in March, when everything was shut down, a lot of us here in the Central Valley saw that this was going to happen. We had an inclination and a feeling that the companies themselves, so here in the Central Valley, there is an array of factories, and that is the primary source of income for folks. It is one of the primary workplaces or work areas that we have. It's a lot of food processing plants, which includes fruits, includes nuts, includes meat, poultry, just like Foster Farms, right? And so when we were following the news around COVID, and we knew that it was going to be fastly spread, and seeing that these companies usually, for the majority of the time, do not necessarily cater or have fair working environments for said workers, we knew it was going to be very detrimental. And so we have been attempting to demand, well, it first started with a couple of questions, but then it was just demands of, hey, we need to shut down these plants when we have any sort of cases, shut them down for 2 weeks, make sure that your employees get tested, and then that way we know whether we can go back to work or not. However, that has not been the case since everything shut down back in March. And we have seen a progressive growth, and then it turned into a spike, which then, as we guessed, spread incredibly quickly, to the point where now there's several fatalities, and not just in one plant, but in different areas. Right now, specifically, Foster Farms, which was actually one of the ones that was getting infected very quickly among a lot of the other plants that are here, is now, they're reported that there's 300 plus cases and about 8 deaths within. And the week before, there was a report that there was 3 deaths and 200 cases. However, one of my uncles works there, and the thing here in the Central Valley is that everyone's usually connected with someone who works in a different plant, and so we knew that those numbers were incorrect. And then the later report came out with 8 fatalities and 300 plus infected folks. This is more of us. We think that information is still incorrect. We believe that it's actually higher than that. However, we'll base it off of what has been released, right? So Foster Farms was then ordered to shut down. Did it shut down? No. What happened was that they shut down portions of the plant, sent folks home, but it kept certain areas of the plant still open, of the facilities. And then they reached out to their workers saying, please report in your next work scheduled. Please report back to work in your next scheduled shift. I'm sorry. And so we have been in contact with the County of Merced to see if we can get it shut down, because it is spreading uncontrollably. And now the Central Valley is one of the biggest hotspots for COVID right now. The numbers of COVID has spiked drastically. And the County of Merced had an agreement with Foster Farms that they're not going to shut it down. And so there's this back and forth of, wait, so is it not going to be, are the CDC guidelines going to be implemented? What are the rules and regulations that are going into this? And the responses that we get are not from any official folks, but rather than workers themselves. And the things that are happening within, according to the workers that have reported, is that they are working 3 to 4 like feet apart. They're not having the social distance. They're not doing scattered rotations of shifts to then minimize contact with folks. If people are getting sick in certain departments, no one is told about it. They instead keep it as a secret, and then or they keep it hidden, right? They keep it hidden from the folks. And so what happens is that these folks and these workers have to then utilize some sort of like phone system, right, to then call their coworker, who then will call their coworker and call their coworker. That way they're trying to trace like, hey, I have COVID right now, we worked together, you should go get checked. And that's how they're attempting to kind of protect themselves, because the company is not doing any of this. The company instead is coercing them to go back into work. And my aunt right now, she is currently on sick leave because of an accident that happened in the plant itself. However, a lot of folks right now, including her, that are either on workers' comp or disability temporarily to until they get, better to go back into work, are being called in immediately. And they're attempting to disregard the orders from doctors and having them to go back into work, threatening them that they will lose their job if they don't present themselves to work, even though they have doctor authorization not to go in. And that's just a component. The rest of workers who are still there, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people who are terrified. They're very anxious and having anxiety attacks, because you're going into work for your own death. Like, they're sending you into your own death. They're not cleaning these facilities. They're not following the guidelines. So it's like, what are they doing to help these workers? It's flabbergasting. It's appalling. And quite frankly, it's even worse that the administration stepped in and actually ruled in favor of foster farms. When we're asking for help from our government to say, hey, can you help us out because your people that feed you are dying? And the response that we got was that the that foster farms is going to continue to stay open.
And again, we're speaking with Ramon Real, whose family is working in some of these plants. And you also reported that these workers tried to get in touch with Cal OSHA. Now, Cal OSHA is run by the state of California. It's not run by Trump, the Trump administration. Governor Newsom is in charge of Cal OSHA, the Division of Industrial Relations. Cal OSHA is supposed to be responsible for protecting health and safety in the workplace. What happened with workers who did go to Cal OSHA or tried to contact them to make sure that they were following the guidelines to protect their health and safety?
As the coronavirus has continued to spread, Assemblyman Rivas has been pushing for workplace safety measures the companies must follow.
I expected more from Cal OSHA, expected more from federal OSHA to really intervene and to do more in the way of ensuring that there is industry-wide regulations to protect our farm workers. Unfortunately, farm workers don't have high-paid lobbyists, which makes the passage of any significant legislation very challenging, to be quite honest.
In the meantime, California's Governor Gavin Newsom has stepped in. He's announced measures to help agricultural workers, including enforcing safety guidelines that until now have been voluntary.
This is talking about compliance on health and safety in our meatpacking facilities. One should not have to put their life at risk to go to work as an essential worker.
The governor is creating strike teams that will inspect work sites in targeted counties and could find companies that are not following the guidelines.
Now that we have statewide guidelines in place, now that the governor has made the commitment to enforce those guidelines, is a step in the right direction.
But Rivas said the state still needs to do more to understand the scope of the outbreak among farm workers.
And clearly when it comes to COVID-19, this discussion needs to be driven by data. Who's infected? Where are they infected? Why were they infected? We need to do everything we can to acquire the data that's going to help us make informed decisions, but also create and introduce legislation to address problems.
Yeah, so from our knowledge, on our end, we have been submitting reports to Cal OSHA so they can go to these facilities and revise and check what is going on, correct? However, what they're seeing is that there's such a lack of employees with Cal OSHA, and there's a tremendous amount of canneries here that need uh, folks to go in there so they can report and see what is happening. But the the demand is much bigger than the folks working at Cal OSHA um, can withstand, which means that there needs to be more employees within Calosho itself, so then they can come in and help us. But right now, because there are so many, they're stretched so thin that we have they can't make it out here, or at least like not to every factory that things are going down, right?
And what happens to workers that get sick at these factories? Have they been able to get medical care? And is the companies taking responsibility for them?
No. So from my knowledge, from what I know, being in contact with some of these workers from different facilities, if they get sick, there has been instances where people have passed out on the line, not all the same day, but throughout. Um, there was a report that one of them was taken to the lunchroom and then left there until their daughter could pick them up. But if someone fainted or passed out while working in on the line or wherever in your work area, I would think or hope to think that you would call some sort of paramedic or some sort of help that can come assist me rather than just leave and calling someone to just come pick me up and just kind of leaving me there and maybe giving me some Advil or something. But
What factories did that happen at that you heard?
this one specifically is Dole. That's the one that I do know. I'm in more conversations and more in connection with the Dole workers.
So you're saying that
But
workers,
that happened there.
so workers in the factory are passing out from sickness or illness, and then rather than calling a paramedic and getting proper health treatment, they call the family member to pick them up.
And these are all linked back to COVID. So within the span of 3 weeks, I personally spoke to 4 different employees, 2 of them which landed in the ER because of COVID. 2 others were among those folks that passed out at work because they were sick of COVID. Um, and so the employers themselves are not being held responsible and they're not taking any accountability. And they are attempting to do anything possible to avoid workers' comp or any kind of sick pay. And yet, instead of encouraging them, such as the CDC guidelines state specifically, if your workers feel ill or if they exhibit any kind of COVID-related symptoms, encourage them to stay home. It clearly states it there in the CDC guidelines that you know that they have. The issue is that they're not doing that. Instead, they are intimidating these workers going to come in, right? Um, if you don't come in, then you're going to lose your job. And that's the biggest threat that they get. Now, Dole works with something called Matrix, which is their some sort of, I honestly don't know if it's some sort of like a insurance claim thing that when people get sick, they have to report through them. And what's happening right now is any worker that has gotten sick, that has gone through them, um, that have been approved of leave of absence has actually been called every day to go into work, regardless whether they have a leave of absence or not. Which then goes into this whole different layer of issues. Now, circling back to foster farms, my aunt right now is currently at home workers' comp because of an accident that she had where she injured her arm. That was not COVID related, but they made it incredibly impossible for her to actually take the time off that she needed. And so what we are seeing is that now that there are more cases of folks who need the time off that is related to COVID, they're making it near impossible for folks to take that time that they need, because their rebuttal is that they need folks in the plants to keep the production going, that they need folks to keep the demands of product to continue to move forward. And so what's happening is that they are discounting or they are ignoring symptoms and discounting them as just like a regular headache, or, oh, your temperature is a little high, but it's okay. But it's like, no, we are in a global pandemic. This is incredibly dangerous. and we are literally seeing and hearing people get sick, going to the ER, and then there have been several deaths, and it's very, you'll see someone, you'll hear them. Just for an example, within a span of 2 weeks, I was talking to someone, two workers, a married couple. One, she was fine one day. The next time I called, she had a fever. And I was like, what do you feel? She says, I feel that the bones on the inside hurts. It feels like the fever is within inside of the bones. And I called every other day just to make sure, that she was okay. And then it went from her, traveled to her husband, right? Like the husband then got COVID as well. Um, and so she ended up becoming a little bit better, but both of them ended up in the ER within 5 days. So this was a progression of 5 days where she was sick, then the husband was sick, then they were in the ER. She came back home. Husband was still in the ER. Currently, right now, one of my neighbors is in the ER hooked up to life supports, and he just went into a coma. We're hoping that he gets out of it so he can come back home. But this is, it's insane. We are seeing this happen. We are, we are literally seeing these folks be fined to not well ER. Boom, like it's insane how quickly it happens. And what's even worse is that we don't have support as much as we, in the sense that we don't have support from people who can actually take the regulations and actions to make these decisions, to close down these plants, to sanitize them, to clean them, to protect their workers. Right now, none of that is here. It's gone. It's about monetary gain. It's about it, what the company can get out of these workers because they're dispensable, right? They always say you're a dispensable employee. Like we have a huge or a ton amount of people wanting to work. And so that is always one of the biggest rebuttals and counterpoints that these employers have, is threatening the workers with their employment. So then they're coerced into going into work regardless of how scared they are, regardless of whether they're sick or not. And that's not okay. It's absolutely criminal. It's these employers and these companies need to be held accountable.
And at Foster's is unionized. I believe the United Farm Workers of America represent the workers. What are the unions doing? And have you been contacted by the workers in these plants?
This is the interesting part, is that I don't know what's going on with the unions, because I personally work with a theater company, and we do community activism as well. So I guess this is just my hypothesis, is that if the unions were helping the workers, why would the workers or employees feel the need to contact a theater company that does community activism to help? Not to say like we absolutely are here to help, but it makes me wonder what's going on with the union reps. And so then we started, but we attempted to contact the reps from Tisdale, which is the Teamsters local. I'm forgetting the local number, but it took us 4 months to get a response, and it wasn't even from the same local union. It was actually from a different local. It was still Teamsters, but a different local. So this is just making me, it's making us question what is going on with these unions. Why aren't they also showing up to support and help their employees? Now, I can't speak on the union with Foster Farms because I haven't been in contact with them. And from an article that I did see is that they are threatening to boycott. But again, these issues have been happening since March. And for them to threaten to boycott now, I mean, it's great for them to show up, but at the same time, I'm like, where was the support back in March? It didn't need to get all the way here where now there's several fatalities. And now you have 8 families and then some who are mourning the loss of these people. Where were you then? Where was the union that was supposed to protect these workers? Where were they? And now that they're finally making some sort of action that I'm seeing, such as this boycott that they're threatening Foster Farms with, great, but where's the result? Where's the action? What's going on? Like, we need the action. We've needed it. So this isn't about just talking, having some sort of theory or some sort of underlying looming threat. So my question for this union is, where are you? What are you doing? Can you step up a bit? Not a bit. Can you just step it up and show up for the workers?
And Governor Newsom has been asked about Cal OSHA.
The governor was asked about the demonstration and the demand for increased inspections, but gave a very general answer.
We have the responsibility to do that. That's OSHA's job foundationally, was pre-pandemic, certainly is as we work our way through this pandemic.
In fact, there was a protest by Tesla workers against the reopening of the Tesla plant by Elon Musk. And he said at that time, that was actually in March the 16th, that it was a foundation and responsibility of Cal OSHA to protect the workers in California. What do you think Governor Newsom is? Do you think he really has become a representative of the bosses, of the billionaires who own these companies? Because he obviously has been told there's serious problems. There have been letters by the Sacramento Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, by the Cal Fed, by over 70 organizations begging him to fully staff OSHA, including hiring 1,000 OSHA inspectors. There are 18 million workers in California, and they're facing the brunt, the frontline workers particularly, of this epidemic.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? It's like there's so many folks and organizations and companies and other unions as well that I know of that have been asking Newsom, we need your help. We need OSHA to be fully staffed. There's been countless tweets, emails, letters, Facebook posts, tweets directly to Newsom, tweets that have gone viral that are direct from Congress people and just so on and so forth, right? But where's the action? Again, it's been months. We're in September now. We're nearing towards the end of the year and there has been no action. So, I mean, it just feels like the thing with the Central Valley is that the Central Valley is usually seen as the of California. And so it actually produces a majority of the nation's food. We produce, I believe it's a third of the nation's food and 99% of the nation's nuts and certain fruits. Like, we're the number one producer of dairy, aside from cheese, because that's Wisconsin. But we produce so much. We are the folks that feed the United States, yet we are the folks that are not getting the help that we need to live, to keep working, to keep feeding the American people. On top of that, if the food itself is getting contaminated, imagine what it's going to happen. Newsom, what are you doing? Is my question to him. Like, can you show up too? We need action to be taken. We have needed action to be taken a long time ago. And things are just getting worse and they're going to get worse. We've been saying it. We said it from the beginning. We said this was going to happen. It is happening. We are saying that people are going to get even worse infected. We are saying that this is going to be contaminating the food and it's going to spread. We're not there yet, but I say yet because Newsom hasn't done anything to be able to slow this down and contain it. And it's happening. We're seeing it. And the thing that's so, what I don't understand is that folks are ruling things without being here to see what is actually happening because they're just seeing monetary gain and product and what is being produced. But you are not seeing what is happening within these buildings. You're not seeing what is happening to these workers. You're not seeing who are the people who are sick, who are handling our food. And it's not just the food that goes out to the stores. It's food that goes out to hospitals, that goes into schools. Well, schools are kind of shut down right now, but still it's like they go into schools, hospitals, prisons. It's more than just the food that we get in the stores. And so from what I know, Newsom has put a freeze on hiring. But right now, on top of the unemployment rate that we have, we would absolutely benefit from having more Cal OSHA employees. Staff it up. get some more folks up in here. It'll help the unemployment rate right now. It'll help people who are at home unemployed, who are struggling to meet payments, because there's a huge thing that's happening with unemployment, that only 5% of calls have been answered or received. It's like, come on, yo. It's a win-win. Unemployment rates, great. Now we can go over there and send people in to then start regulating and making sure that these workers are safe. And that'll have a domino effect, which will then help keep America safe. That's all we want. We want all of us to be good, but we need people like Newsom to step up.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much, Ramon, for talking with us and giving us a upfront report about this emergency crisis catastrophe for the families, for the workers in Central Valley. A large number of them are Latino. And do you think it has something to do with the fact that they're not getting protection because of their nationality, because they're Latinos or Mexican Americans and indigenous people?
There's no doubt about it. There is a large Latinx and Middle Eastern population that are working within these factories. And one of the biggest things that we are seeing is language discrimination. Any type of information that is given is in English. Even if the information is seldom, it is in English with no translations. And from the reports that we're getting from employees is that they're sometimes made to sign documents that are not interpreted, they're not translated, they don't know what it is that they're signing, right? And so there is a huge advantage that they're taking, they as in the employers, and they're taking advantage of the employees' language barrier, right? They're utilizing that as a way to exploit these workers and as a way to manipulate them. And so, yes, I absolutely believe that it is tied with these folks being from marginalized backgrounds. It's absolutely tied to that. They know that they can get away with it, or at least that's their thoughts, right? They're like, okay, they don't speak English, it's fine. They don't understand what's going on. They can get away with whatever it is that we're doing to them. And that's how they've been functioning, and that's how they are functioning right now.
Okay, well, I want to thank you again for joining us on Work Week. We've been talking with Ramon Real, and people in California, people in the United States need to stand up and speak out and demand protection for these workers, health and safety protection, so they don't continue to die from COVID and infect their families in the community. So thanks for joining us on Work Week, Ramon.
For having me, Steve.